Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, April 23rd, 2026, and today we're talking jasmine vines, vermicompost, a clover and pumpkin patch idea, what 5 books I would save in a fire, and your sorrel rocks, but literally. So let's do it. All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this fine late April week. That's right. We are inching closer to May, which for many of us is when the growing season of everything from grass to veggies to weeds really jumps to life. I did indeed, as I said I would yesterday on my Earth Day, deliver a bunch of veggies and start my stringing of the tomatoes. I got to say, that is one of my least favorite jobs on the farm every year. I don't have many jobs that I dread. I truly don't. I love almost everything I do. But that first day of tying the tomatoes off to the trellis and beginning to train them up and prune them for the first time, probably my least favorite, or at least close to least favorite thing that I do. I don't mind all the pruning through the season or anything else. It's just that crawling on the ground over top of the interplanted stuff, in this case it was like romaine and beets, probably keeps me from, like planting any more tomatoes than I already do in the tunnel. In the field, I do the Florida weave, which is, makes it really easy for trellising, so no crawling there, but I can't do that really in the tunnel for these tomatoes because they're going to be here all the way until like November, and they get super tall, and I have to prune them to 2 central leaders, so it takes a little bit of work and time, but yeah, it's just not my favorite thing. So I spread it out over several days for my back and sanity's sake. Anyway, that's enough commiserating, or is it just me miserating when it's just me by myself? But anyway, I'm close to done on those. It's an Earth Day miracle. All right, so it is Thursday, and on Thursdays, we like to take a few Patreon questions, but I want to change the dynamic of this day a little bit to make it more engaging and encourage you all to think about how you would answer these questions, giving it more of a group council vibe, our therapy session, which I like it because it has just enough Southern drawl sort of built into it that it just makes it perfect where I live. So we will still take a few Patreon questions, but I want you all to feel a little bit more empowered to think about these questions and what you all would add. So today's first question comes to us from Patreon member Julie Rainey, who writes, quote, "Alarm, alarm. Hey, Jesse, Julie here, upstate South Carolina. I was about to move some well-rested cedar wood chips from arborists dropped last fall and now realize that what looks to be invasive jasmine vines have taken over my pile. I use my mulch in the pathways of my floriculture production beds. I'm currently trying to meticulously pull out each little hair of vine, impossible to get them all, and a huge time suck. Should I give up on this mulch pile, use it in the pathways, and kill vines as they spring up? This currently feels like a lose-lose battle," end quote. All right, thanks. And okay, so there are a couple different types of jasmine that grow in the South, and they can be quite vigorous. In fact, they are often planted as good ground covers for that reason, because they can outcompete so many other plants. So my recommendations, so as not to transplant it into the garden, would be to follow your instinct and not use them in the pathways yet. Instead, you may want to consider tarping the pile and mowing around it to essentially occultate the wood chips of the invasives. You could also compost the wood chips instead of occultating them. Just add nitrogen, water, and go. That would also help. In general, I don't recommend applying a mulch that has an invasive like that in it until you have treated it. But if it's already down, like on the soil in some places, you will have to continue to pull the plant. If you see it early, digging up the roots as best you can. I know they're probably pretty fine. If it gets a foothold, focus on that area just as much as you can to keep it under control. And if it's too much to pull, mow it to the ground repeatedly to starve those roots, or occultate it, tarp it. That might help as well. It's a bummer, but it is technically controllable. Others can feel free to add their 2 cents here as well, especially those who have dealt with jasmine, if even in landscaping. Our second Patreon question today comes to us from Dwight Yoder, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, I have a question about vermicompost. I started a small operation with 4 trays and now have several gallons of the stuff. I am wondering how much can be safely used directly on beds. I was thinking of incorporating it into the compost I made in a bin over the past year," end quote. Well, Dwight, that sounds like a fun problem to have. So with vermicompost, it's less about safety and more about diminishing returns. At some point, the soil/plants don't really need any more and aren't really utilizing it as much. There is some research that suggests you will see no or even some negative results by applying more than 60% to soil mix, but that would be an absolute ton or really multiple tons of vermicompost on a garden. So how much ever you feel comfortable applying based on the amount that you have versus the space that you have to apply it is going to be fine, more than fine, really. It should lead to some really great production, and mixing it into your compost, totally fine, especially if the compost is done and the vermicompost is done. Vermicompost is just a really great resource to have, for sure, for microbes, for soil health, for nutrients. Quoting one article on the subject, quote, applying vermicompost to soil lowers its pH, improves porosity and water retention capacity, enhances microbial activity and overall soil health. These improvements lead to better germination, growth, development, and yield of vegetable crops. Furthermore, vermicompost protects plants from oxidative stress caused by various abiotic factors meaning like non-living stresses like winds, droughts, etc., by bolstering the antioxidant defense system, end quote. So yeah, where you can use vermicompost, I would do so. All right, tell us your thoughts and experience with vermicompost. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will take on a very specific farm challenge as a family or a farmily, whichever is closer. I'm going to guess farmily. Farmilies are often pretty close. BRB.
So just an interesting little deal here. I am mounting my prop house. Got all my peppers and some leftover tomatoes. And if you look, the peppers that are kind of shaded here by the tomatoes are really, really big and really, really green. And then as you come closer to just being fully exposed to sun, they're a little bit smaller, which kind of surprises me, but kind of highlights the fact that most things like a little bit of shade, even peppers. Nice and big, a little bit smaller.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. All right, back to the show. All right, a quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring you $2 worth of value a month? $5? You can support it by going over to patreon.com/no-till-growers and signing up. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Dylan Howell, who writes, quote, Donnelly, Idaho 5A. We're adding a pumpkin patch to our farm on a 3-acre parcel next to the market garden. The land was the local pumpkin patch around 3 years ago. It's since sat fallow to the best of our knowledge. We'd love a quick sanity check before we get going on this plan. The previous farmer recommended we go the conventional route, till the whole field, add some synthetic fertilizer, lay plastic mulch plus strip tape, then plant into the plastic. We're trying to apply our more ecological no-till approach on our or otherwise organic under application farm. Our current game plan: seed white clover cover crop on the entire plot, frost seed, it's currently snow covered. By mid-May, build hills of compost on the planned grid, 6-foot row spacing for most, 12-foot for long vine rows, and 3 to 6 feet in row spacing depending on the variety. Our largest concern is the early weed pressure, but we're hoping that the white clover holds it down until the pumpkin leaves form their canopy. We're a 2-person farm, and this will be in a pretty dang busy part of our season, but we're super excited to bring the pumpkin patch back for the community. End quote. All right, thank you. So interesting stuff here. Basically creating a field of clover, laying down some compost mounds, planting pumpkins, and waiting. Now, I love the idea in theory, but I have some worries. Worry one is about the clover and the pumpkins together. I worry that the clover is going to overtake the pumpkins, and the pumpkins are just not going to produce super well, and that the weed pressure is going to be too intense overall. It may not be. I'm not sure how vigorous the clover will get in your climate, but in our experience here, planting squash into, clovers, we've not had great results. The clover can shade out the baby pumpkins, climbing into those compost mounds as well, challenging them for water and sunlight, but utilizing that newfound nutrient stash, the compost. The transplanting may work. You maybe could also just, utilize a wider mulch or potentially strip tillage if you're, willing to do some amount of cultivation, so they have more protection from the clover creeping in. You could also mow the clover super low to the ground to the point that of, almost or just a little bit, killing it before sowing and then again before the vines take over. But the weeds will be the issue there. I kind of fear they will kind of be an issue anyway if you've not dealt with them prior to sowing the clover. Like, you'd want a perfectly clean field before you establish your clover. And what you don't want is a pumpkin patch full of weeds that are hard to walk through and find the pumpkins. I'm not saying it won't work. You just might want to run it as a small trial to start, do some with the clover perhaps, and then a little bit more in conventional but organic way with perhaps something like the strip till option. Vining crops are just complicated with living mulches, even for us where most of our beds have living pathways. For the vining crops, I go with mulches in the pathways over the living pathways when we plant vining crops, just because it gets so messy and impossible to keep up with. And for us, in our climate, stuff just grows through the clover, like weeds, And that may not be the same in Idaho, but for us, it's warm enough for long enough that grasses and et cetera will get through that clover. And so we end up with a worse weed situation because the vines are in the way and then we can't pull or mow any of the weeds. So maybe there is another crop you could use there, but my impulse is to say dead mulches for viners, living mulches for standers, which does not have any sort of memorable ring to it, but you get the idea. Anyway, let us know, listeners, what you all would do here, or what you all think, or if you've tried clovers and squashes together and had some success, especially in those cooler climates. Otherwise, let's take a quick break, and then we can talk some farm literature. Book right back. See, if the word starts with a B, then I can put it right in front of the right back, and then it works. Yep. That's just science. Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything: custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Good Agriculture. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping and tax filing, so there is no scrambling at tax time. They keep your books clean and up to date and show you where your farm's finances stand. If you're behind, they'll get you caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. All right. Got a good hypothetical here from Hank Visali, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. Enjoy the podcast and book. I see you have books on the shelf. What 5 books would you save in case of a fire? I'm a second-year grower and took a deep dive into reading and learning. Keep up the great work, Hank," end quote. All right, fun question here, Hank. Though I am going to have to pare it down a little bit, or at least like modify it a little bit. First, let's just assume Hank means farm books here and not just like any book I would save. Second, none of these are precious necessarily. Like, there's no like first editions or autographs or anything. I mark up my books too much for them to really be all precious. So, let's just upgrade that from a fire to more or less like the end of the world as we know it, because, insurance would buy back most of the books after a fire. And I would probably, get in trouble with my wife for running back in to save books. Anyway, the 5 farm books I would probably save in the end of the world fire sort of situation. Let's go with that. So first, this was harder than I thought it would be, just thinking about this. The first book I would probably save, though, is Sustainable Market Farming by Pam Dowling, 2nd edition, because this thing is a tome and has a lot of great and practical, to my area, at least, growing info. Yeah, it's great to have a book like this where you just get so much information about where you tend to grow and, somebody who's growing over in Virginia, which is very similar to us. The second book I would probably get is Helen Attow's The Ecological Farm. This would be in there too because, the diversity of info and depth of knowledge. It's got some orchard stuff. It's got some vegetable stuff. It's got a lot of mulching and no-till and minimalist sort of approaches. And there's just an amazing amount of info in here that I haven't really got to dive enough into. So I'd be happy to have that in an end-of-world situation. The Holistic Orchard by Michael Phillips. who knows? Maybe at the end of the world, I want to grow some fruit trees. So this probably wouldn't be the worst thing to have around, because I've got the veggie stuff in my brain. I need it's the perennial stuff that I'm probably always could use some help on. There are so many others that I'm tempted to put here that I think other people should have, like the Humanure Handbook, which would be great in a pseudo apocalypse. But if I'm going to, just do me personally, I might need a seed book. So I'll take Dan Breezebois, The Seed Farmer. Shouts to that book, and shouts to Dan, because I'll probably need to save some seeds. You never know. Actually, you probably do know if it's the end of the world. And then I think something with some good ancient traditional knowledge might be helpful. So Farmers of 40 Centuries, this is a really awesome book that I will flip through from time to time. It's not like a sit down and read it kind of book. Like you just pick a chapter, pick a few pages and read through it and just kind of get some really good ideas of what people were doing, like just different traditional farming techniques. So I definitely think that would be on the list, because you never know. You may need to be like, how would somebody who has absolutely no electricity and has to rely on, night soil to produce food do it? Yeah, could be helpful. So those are not necessarily my favorite farm books. They're not necessarily the best farm books, though I think all of them are very, very good, but definitely the ones that I think I would use the most. I thought I could only take 5. That's a fun question and challenge. How would you all answer it from your own bookshelves? Let us know. And the last one of the day, the last question that is, comes to us from Fluxion, who writes, quote, "The plot I'm prepping for spring is discouraging me. There are so many rocks. My family has a saying for our ranch land: you can dig a hole either with a teaspoon or a backhoe, but nothing in between. But I also need to raise the entire quarter acre up about 3 to 5 feet with material, compost, soil, etc. that I will truck in because it's kind of in a hole. I plan to pick off as many rocks as I reasonably can by hand, then hope the added material is enough for the plants to not be affected by the rocks further down. Do you think this will work? Thanks, Jesse and team." End quote. Okay, so interesting question here. And well, yes and no on the question of whether or not I think it will work. It depends on what you want to grow, like what crops you're looking for, and the quality of that fill as well will make a big difference. 4 to 5 feet is a lot of depth, and you probably don't need quite that much if that's what you were going for. Maybe you just mean 4 to 5 yards or something, but if you're going for that much depth, that's a lot. Most crops are in the 12 to 18 inch range for their roots or less, with a few exceptions. Now, I have dealt with heavy rock presence like that before, and these were like flat limestone rocks that I had to deal with that were super thin, but very much in the way. They just kind of laid flat under the ground. I didn't have them in every area, but the areas where I did have them, I had to become really strategic about growing there. Shallow rooted crops like summer squash and lettuce killed it there. They did fine. Deeper rooted stuff like tomatoes hated it. And I hated planting them there because I would run into a rock every time I wanted to dig a hole. So we just stopped growing deeper rooted crops in that area and moved those to an area with deeper soil. So you could go very deep with the fill in a few places that you reserve for peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, sweet potatoes, etc. Then consider focusing on more shallow rooted crops in those rockier areas. Rocks, though, they're tough. And if it makes up a substantial portion of your soil, like you don't have any non-rocky areas, there is only so much you can do about that. The reality is that not every plot of ground makes sense for annual vegetable production without a ton of work, or at least it doesn't make sense for every crop. So sometimes you just have to pick between a massive overhaul of what's there, like the soil, or just a massive overhaul of what you want to grow. In a way, that could be a blessing, having the soil choose what you grow and, reduce how many crops that you could be growing or are having to deal with in that area. Again, the challenge with soil is the unrelenting amount of possibility it holds. It's always that way. So maybe it'll narrow it down for you. I hope that's at least a little bit helpful. And otherwise, I think that is it for this therapy sesh. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and/or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thanks to Michelle for all her work. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear.
I would flower, I could be a broken tower.
Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-till-growers, our supporters of the show, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of April, however little of it is left, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Ojag, It's maybe one of those. And anyway, it's keeping the story going for the week. So as you will remember, our heroine is Lydia, a retired teacher who desperately wanted to get on a cruise and just hang by the pool and read and relax and enjoy her retirement. But when she gets out to sea, out from the shore, one late afternoon early on the voyage, there is a large commotion. And when she goes to see what's happening, pirates, modern day ones, have boarded the vessel, and one runs right by her and doesn't, for some reason, seem to notice her. So she slips into a little closet off the main deck and hides and watches through a small hole as the young pirates steal from the other passengers and the boat and take a bunch of safes and stuff and throw it onto their ship. But after a few minutes, it seems like they're not going to leave, and she's had enough and decides, no one is ruining my vacation, and that is for tomorrow on Cruise Control. I like that. I feel like it fits with this one. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then for Feedback Friday. It should be a blast. Bye.
Cantu heard you loud and clear with their new Ultra Moisture collection. Powered by Botana Oil and Jamaican Black Castor Oil, this new lineup collection is clinically proven to deliver nonstop moisture for up to 5 days. 5 whole days. The shampoo gently cleanses without stripping, and the leave-in and stylers keep curls soft, defined, and nourished long after wash day. Plus, it's free of sulfates, parabens, silicones, and mineral oils. If your curls have been craving real moisture, this is it. So if your hair's curls have been thirsty, go ahead and try the new Cantu Ultra Moisture collection. Your curls will thank you. Available now at Walmart.